All right, so we're going to get to our interview right here with David Waters real quick. Before we get to that, I just really wanted to play this clip, Shane, because it looks like these Florida Gators, man, they're feeling confident going into this
Mm-hmm.
one. Brenton Cox, their outstanding defensive lineman, he was asked here this week, are you guys ready for Alabama? Oh, he didn't like that one, Shane.
Hey, Brenton. Well, following up a little bit on that, what would it mean for this program to beat Alabama? Haven't they've lost 7 in a row to them. What would this game mean? And would it just kind of blow up, college football and certainly the SEC a little bit?
Yeah, like I said to Cassidy, we just trying to get over that hump. Each year, we prepare for them either it's the end of the year or in the beginning of the year, like this game. We just try to get over the hump. They're a good team. We're a good team. So, I mean, if we were to win, I don't think it would be a shocker. If they were to win, I don't think it would be a shocker because, like I said, it's the SEC. You never know. So,
Do you guys feel ready after the 2 games? I mean, first team defense played pretty well. Do you guys feel like you're ready for this kind of a challenge?
this kind of a challenge. Yeah, we ready. Of course we ready. I mean, big question is, are they ready?
Ooh, how about that, Shane? I mean, you got to have confidence when you're going in to play Alabama because we all know their reputation and their history. They beat the hell out of everybody, but I think it starts. You remember when Ole Miss beat Alabama back-to-back years? Of course, they had to play good football, but I think it really started with that team believing they could beat Alabama, and I also think damn near everybody that suits up against Alabama. I don't think they think they can win that game.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's all mentality. I'm not saying it's all mentality, but it does play a factor, dude. I mean, I know a lot of folks were happy I went down memory lane, but I'm telling you, when I was in high school, there's a few teams we did not want to play, and it was between our ears. You think about it, and even though the game probably could have went a different way. If you let it get in there and in front of you, then you start making mistakes, and then you're playing behind the 8 ball. That's not what you want. But I love this, Mike. I love my leaders coming out and taking shots. Not none of this bullshit that Alabama is the greatest team on earth. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear that we're going to go in there and we're going to beat them. Now, obviously, Nick Saban's going to use these clips to his advantage, but that's what I want to hear. I want to hear a confident program going in there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what LSU did. You think about LSU and the president down there and everything, man, they were firing off comments. They did not care. They were going to go down there and they were going to beat Alabama, and turns around, they ended up doing it. So I'm not saying that's going to happen with Florida, but I definitely want my team going in there with this confidence definitely on their shoulders,
Yeah, without a doubt. All right, Shane, so we've held off long enough. Let's kick it to our interview here with David Waters. All right, we're pleased now to be joined by the great David Waters. Of course, Gators Breakdown Podcast, that's the show. And I like to tell people I have a YouTube channel. David has conquered YouTube, in my opinion. All his videos, thousands and thousands of views. You can follow him at GatorDave_SEC. David, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Of course, getting ready and gearing up for this big game, Florida, Alabama. But it's just glad to have college football back. Glad to have it the way we're used to seeing it after 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to the big game in just a moment. But I got to start with this one. Thoughts on Florida State losing to Jacksonville State?
Yeah, I'm sitting there taking notes for my Gators Breakdown podcast the next day. It's just getting late, and I live in Jacksonville, and we don't have ACC network on Comcast cable here. So sitting there scrolling Twitter just a little bit, taking a little bit of break, and I see a score. I'm just like, hold on, this can't be right. I thought they were pulling it away, but they never did. And then they score late, but then Jacksonville State has enough time, and there they go with a heck of a catch and run after. Why they're not playing some kind of prevent defense, I'll never know. I know Mike Norvell said there was too much time left on the clock to play prevent defense, but there's 6 seconds to lose. I mean, I don't know. Another bad coaching decision there from a Florida State head coach, but they were feeling good about themselves after that close loss to Notre Dame, and we'll see what that amounted to. But we'll Gator Nation's not going to feel sorry for what happens in Tallahassee.
Yeah, so much for that momentum there. So, Gators, speaking of momentum, Gators rolling into the big week here. Obviously, 2-0, not really even tested first 2 weeks of the season. Is Despite the fact that the Gators are winning big, is there maybe one area of concern or just maybe a question mark you have for this Florida team heading into the Alabama game?
Yeah, my big thing is, look, we know this offense was going to shift to more of a run-focused offense. You lose Trash, you lose Tony, you lose Pitts. You have a stable running backs coming back there that Florida can go pretty much 5 deep at if they want to, and 2 quarterbacks there that can use their legs in the run game as well. So you knew the shift was going to be there on offense. And I know it's FAU and I know it's USF. It didn't matter who Florida was playing the last couple of years; they were not able to run the ball, and they've been able to run the ball these first couple of weeks. And I always say, look, you don't get enough credit sometimes for doing the things you're supposed to do, and at least now, with the talent Florida's able to assemble, they should be able to run the ball versus teams like this, and now they are. But now the next question is, can that translate? Can it translate to your first SEC game? Can it translate to the number one team in America coming into the swamp? It's going to have to for Florida to have a chance. So at least there's a baseline to go by this. Okay, the run game is better. We just don't know how good yet until you start going into SEC play and see this week. You may not even know this week either, just that's how good Alabama's defense is. You probably don't get a gauge for just how good it can be because they may be shutting down almost everybody they play this year. But at least you got a good starting point this year, better than you have in years past. Other side of the ball for defense, we just don't really know a whole lot yet. They got to bounce back from 2020. I caution Gator Nation, unless the bottom fell out, you weren't going to be able to tell really anything about this defense until Alabama rolls into town.
So obviously, huge game here. Is this the biggest home game of the Dan Mullen era, in your opinion? Because I remember, I don't think it's very comparable, but I think back to Auburn 2019. That was one heck of a scene there. That's the game that kind of sticks out in my mind. Would you say this is the biggest home game under Dan Mullen?
Yeah, you mentioned that one in 2019 too versus Auburn, that 2018 game versus LSU, Joe Burrow's first year at LSU. They end up in the top 10 along with Florida at the end of the year. So maybe at that time that wasn't as big of a game, but when you go back and look at it, that Florida LSU game in 18 was a pretty big game. But yeah, I think with all the pregame atmosphere, all the pregame momentum for just getting ready, also coming off the heels of 2020 and not being able to have full crowds, this is the first gigantic SEC crowd. We had Kentucky, Missouri last week, and a great game by those two teams. But this is Florida, Alabama. These are traditional SEC powers. This is 90,000 fans going to scream their head off. This is SEC theme music gonna start popping at 3:30 Eastern on Saturday. So this is the big matchup that I think kind of just tease off the SEC to get things going. So yeah, I mean, of course, game day decided to go to Penn State and Auburn, and that was kind of something everybody was looking out for. Game day would be in town or not. But for Dan Mullen, yeah, it absolutely is the biggest game since he's been here at Florida, and he can change the narrative a little bit about himself with a big victory Saturday.
Now, you're as plugged in as anybody to the Gator fan base. What is the sense you're getting from the Florida fans, or what's their confidence level? Because I'm seeing a lot of confidence from the players, seeing a lot of confidence from fans. But what's your read on that and how they're feeling about the Gators heading into this matchup?
Wasn't as confident as it was 2 weeks ago before the season started. You start and you play some games. And then look, I mean, it's weird. I mean, Florida is, granted, like I said before, it's FAU and USF, but Florida's putting up a ton of yardage, and they still have a quarterback controversy. That's the weird thing about it. You're putting up all kind of yards, you're putting up all kind of stats, and part of the reason for a lot of those stats is Anthony Richardson. That's why you have a quarterback controversy, because he's the one conducive to a lot of the explosive plays in this Florida offense right now. But they are putting up yards. But, Emory Jones comes out and is through 2 games. He's thrown 4 interceptions. He probably should have thrown 6 interceptions when you go back and look at these first couple of games. So it's a little subdued now in Gator Nation just because you figured Emory Jones in his 4th year would be a little further along in being the guy at quarterback. There, I still think he has the physical talent, and I think just now you just got to figure out what is the mental side. What is he not reading right? Why is he not getting his reads right? Why is he? And everything that we've heard, or actually everything we saw the last couple of weeks where Emory Jones has struggled, is stuff we've heard dating back all the way in the spring, but we didn't get to see it. We didn't get to see an open practice. We didn't get to see a spring game from Florida. We didn't get any fall camp open practices. We didn't get any open scrimmages. Everything was word of mouth coming out of Florida spring and fall camp. But everything we heard is actually coming true. Everything we heard about the inaccuracy, everything we've heard about the timing, everything we've heard about a lack of anticipation from Emory Jones is exactly what we have got in these first couple games. Is there too much pressure on him? Is he feeling the pressure of being the Florida quarterback? Is he now feeling the pressure of a backup quarterback that may eventually overtake him at some point this season? So he's got a chance to right the wrong as well versus Alabama coming up this week. But the confidence level has kind of died down a little bit, also at the same time because Anthony Richardson busted an 80-yard run, and at the end of that 80-yard run, he comes up lame on a hamstring. There, I think Florida fans, if that had not happened, and Dan Mullen comes out on his Monday press conference and says, "All right, we're making a move. Anthony Richardson's going to be starting quarterback," I think Gator Nation would feel exactly like they felt 2 weeks ago before the season even started. But now going through these first couple games and seeing Emory Jones struggle and him probably going to be the quarterback most of the time, we'll see where Anthony Richardson is health-wise. But with that situation there, I just think the expectations kind of died down a little bit there in Gator Nation.
Yeah, and I was listening to your outstanding show, Gators Breakdown, and I didn't realize that Richardson kind of had this hamstring issue dating back to spring. So
yeah,
picked up that little nugget from you. But what do you expect to see from him this week in this this Alabama game? Do you think we're going to get more of Anthony Richardson, or is that maybe just that won't be an option because he may be limited in this game?
I think he'll be limited somewhat. I don't think we'll get, if he was 100% healthy, Emory Jones may have started anyway. That's just Dan Mullen's loyal, maybe even loyal to a fault to veteran quarterbacks that he's coached all throughout his career there. But I do think if Anthony Richardson was 100% and Emory Jones was still the starting quarterback, I do think we would have seen more snaps from Anthony Richardson coming up this week versus Alabama. We'll see where he's at now. We'll see where he's at health-wise. I think if he can handle it, hopefully not the pain tolerance. You hope just the pain's not there. You hope it's just healed enough to where he can go out there and not be affected by the injury. Go out there and just let loose and not have to even worry about it. And if they feel that good about him, I think he plays a lot versus Alabama. But I do think he'll be limited in some form or fashion. There's a big question that is going through the Gator fan base a little bit. It's like, well, do you throw him out there because you're playing Alabama? And if he's not able to do the things that we've seen the first couple of weeks, does that hurt the team? Does that hurt him? Could that hurt his confidence at all? And I look at it just a different way. If he's well enough to play, if he can go out there and play snaps and they feel he can be effective somewhat, I think he has to play in this game. You never know what the future holds. You never know if you starting the Tennessee game the very next week and he's the guy and he goes on and he's that special and you see Alabama again in Atlanta. If he takes snaps this coming up Saturday when he plays Alabama in December, it won't be a surprise. He'll know what to expect from that Alabama defense. I think if he can play, you should throw him out there. But that is the big question there is how much he'll play. I've heard conflicting reports. I've heard that the injury was not as serious as initially thought, and he's been practicing pretty good. Then about 30 minutes before I got on with you, got another report saying that he's been held out of practice pretty much all week. So conflicting reports there. Got to figure out who I want to trust and which way I want to go with that one. But and it could be by design. It could be by design where everybody knows how big this game is. Sometimes they throw fillers out there, the coaching staff do. So we'll see where we'll know Saturday. We'll know Saturday by how much he's out there.
Is this game going to come down to Florida's ability to pass the ball on Nick Saban's defense, do you think?
Important points of the game, yes. I do think Florida's going to try and establish the run. I think they'll try and slow down the game a little bit, try and keep Alabama's offense off the field. And plus, that's just what Florida's been doing well these last couple games, is running the ball. And, Dan Mullen can run the ball and control the clock with his quarterback run game and come up with a game plan to get Emory. I think that can be part of getting Emory Jones more comfortable as well, as using that run game and using the quarterback run game. We haven't seen Emory Jones run a whole lot these first couple games, and rightfully so. He shouldn't be running a whole lot versus FAU and USF. You know what that can be in this offense. You know that's a weapon in this offense. It does no good to go out there and run him 15 times versus FAU and USF. He needs to run 15 times versus Alabama. So I think we'll see that just a little bit more too. But that's going to have to work in order for the passing game to work. I don't think this passing game is going to work unless the run game is working. You can't go out there and ask Henry Jones to throw it 35, 40 times a game. We've already seen that probably will be too much after these first couple of weeks. You're not the same offense that you were last year. You don't have Pitts. You don't have Tony. I still think Florida's good at receiver. I just don't think the offense itself and the way it's designed is to go out there and throw the ball 35, 40 times when you're probably focusing on that run game a little bit. So I do think the passing game will be there. The explosives are going to have to – I don't think Alabama's going to give up a whole lot of big runs, but if Florida can – 5-6 yards of carry and then hit their explosives in the pass game, I think that's their path for victory, but not a whole lot of passing attempts. Just when you do pass, the passes have to be effective.
What are your thoughts on Todd Grantham's defense going against Bill O'Brien's offense? Can they keep this from being a shootout style game that probably Florida, I would not think that's kind of the style they want to play?
I completely agree. If this game's a shootout, I mean, put it this way, I don't think this game will be a shootout because I don't think Florida can get in a shootout unless Anthony Richardson plays a lot. I think that is Florida's only path to a shootout is if Anthony Richardson comes out there and plays a lot. Florida, this might be the only position. Florida's defensive line and Alabama's offensive line. I think if you look at matchups, offense, defense, and position by position, this might be the closest one Florida would actually be tied with Alabama for. You might even give a little bit of an edge for the Florida front versus the Alabama offensive line. This Alabama offensive line's young, especially, and they're kind of weak on that right side. Look, their center. This is going to be his first true road start, along with Bryce Young's first true road start. So you got a center and a quarterback there making their first true road game start there for Alabama. And Alabama, I mean, they'll tell you too, they haven't been happy with the way their offensive line has looked these first couple games. You go back to that Miami game, they were allowing Miami played aggressive. They stacked the box. They played really close to the line of scrimmage. They were getting in the backfield. It's just Alabama's running backs were able to break some tackles and still average almost 4 yards a carry. But I found the stat there. Shout out SEC StatCat there. Alabama was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. They averaged less than a yard before contact. And they ended up breaking tackles there and still getting about 3.5 yards after contact. But at least that shows you that you can penetrate this offensive line a little bit. So I think the Florida defensive line is going to have to step up. Those transfers they have and brought in with Newkirk and Valentino there. Zachary Carter's been on a tear these first couple games for Gator. Brenton Cox is going to have to play like the 5-star he is. This is time for him to show up and make a name for himself for this Florida defense. So I think Florida, if there's one advantage they might have, I still don't know if I call it an advantage, but it might be close to a draw, is that Florida defensive line and the Alabama front. So I said at the beginning, you weren't really going to learn anything about Todd Grantham defense the first couple of weeks. This is where it is. You brought him back. You gave him a mulligan. This is the game he's going to have to prove that mulligan was worth it, that you brought him back here and, not a repeat performance of 2020.
All right, last thing for you, David. I really appreciate all your time. What is the blueprint in your mind for Florida to come away with a huge upset win here against Alabama?
Make the game ugly if you can, and I think it's got to be a fast start for this Florida defense. You can't allow Alabama to get up a couple quick scores. You've got to keep the crowd in it. We've mentioned those other games. We've mentioned the 18 LSU game, the 19 Auburn game. The crowd made a difference. The crowd really did make a difference, but Florida was able to ugly those games up. Neither one of those games were shootouts. They were knock down, drag them out, defensive battles. Can Florida get in a defensive battle with Alabama? And that starts with not letting them get off to a fast start on offense and keeping that crowd in it. If you can keep that crowd in it, and you got a young Bama offensive line and a young Bama quarterback in Bryce Young, got the pressure on them in a fourth quarter game in the swamp, maybe some kind of miscommunication happens. And then maybe you get some kind of sack, fumble, big play there just because of that lack of communication. But that's only going to happen if the crowd's into it in the fourth quarter. You can't allow Alabama to run away with this game. Look at Florida's big games last year. They had the offense to come back. But they got down big versus Georgia. They came back and won that game. They got down big versus Alabama. They came back and made a game of it in the SEC championship game. In big games, the defense gets off to a slow start all the time. They cannot get off to a slow start because they don't have the offensive firepower to fight their way back this time.
All right, he's David Waters of Gators Breakdown. Give him a follow at GatorDave_SEC. Subscribe to the YouTube channel He's got the best Florida podcast out there, and he's got the best YouTube channel in the SEC. David, I really appreciate you, man.
Mike, thanks for having me, man.
All right, so great stuff there from David. Really appreciate him hopping on the line. My man, he probably did about 20 interviews. Not even kidding, Shane. I mean, everywhere I'm seeing on Twitter, David Waters is on this show. He's on that show. He's on this show. It's a big week for him with Alabama coming into town. So very, very appreciative of him giving us some time here to break down this game.
Yeah, absolutely.